ACT Ranch, and I'm here today with Ron, our resident cowboy poet. And his poem today is Stalking the Elusive Barn Quilt. And it's about the barn quilt trails, which you've probably seen all over the country. And there's the Flint Hills Barn Quilt Trail, and we're here in Riley County. The Lazy T, we have a few barn quilts, and so I wanted to start by sharing some of those with you today. This one is a buggy wheel rug, and it's in honor of the pioneer women who would weave rag rugs for their new homes in their wagons as they traveled west. And they would use a spare wheel for the Conestoga wagon and use it to weave these rag rugs that they then used in their new homes. Donna Whitney from here in Riley County has written a book about how to make these buggy wheel rugs, and so this is a tribute to Donna and the Whitney women and all of those real strong pioneer women who built their homes here and began this area and are pioneers. Down on our high tunnel we have one that is called Farmer's Daughter pattern. And these quilts you'll see are just fun designs all over. Some of them are real quilt designs and some are not. This is a real quilt design, Farmer's Daughter, and it was painted originally by my friend Christy Crandall, and it has been repainted by Kevin Luberis. And I thought was very fitting for the high tunnel and those of us who are farmers' daughters here. On our chicken coop, you'll see one that is a chicken, and this one was painted by Mrs. Boswell as a fundraiser for the Round Barn in Pottawatomie County. So that's a really fun one that we have there on the chicken house. Now we're going to walk around to the other side of our Cowboy Cafe where we can see 3 more barn quilts. And on this side of Cowboy Cafe, we have called, well, it's a Sunbonnet Sue one, but I named it Celebrate Your Child, because that's a lot of what happens here at the Lazy T Ranch is celebrating children, birthday parties, other parties, family parties, weddings, and this one is Sunbonnet Sue, traditional quilt pattern, and the little girl handing flowers to her mom with the sunflowers. This one is on our tall grass hall building, and that is a double wedding ring pattern, very traditional, that you've probably seen in quilts many times, and that celebrates the wedding receptions that we have in tall grass. This one on our granary is called Corn and Beans, and it is a traditional quilt pattern also. And I'm from corn and bean country, so I just love that, celebrating corn and beans. Christy Crandall painted that one also. And next week we'll do a second segment with an interesting twist on some barn quilts that you'll see, additional barn quilts at the Lazy T that you'll see. But this one on our barn was the first one in Riley County, and it was painted by Ralph Fontenot, which I just love that. He taught art to my children at Bergman Elementary and to many children in Manhattan, and retired from Lee Elementary, but is just a wonderful watercolor artist. And Ralph loved the idea of the barn quilts, that it's a public art movement. There's no real structure to it, no real requirements. And it began in Manchester, Ohio, in Adams County, by a woman who wanted to honor her mom, who loved quilts. And a lot of times over the years, barns had not even been kept up being painted after a history in this country when there were decorative things on the barns. And Donna Sue Groves thought this would be just a great thing, and it spread kind of like wildfire around the country. And now there are many barn quilt trails, and people followed them to find these barn quilts. When I first saw one in Illinois, I wanted to have this pattern on our barn. It's a Lancaster rose pattern, and we have this quilt that was quilted by my grandmother's grandmother, Maggie Thompson Beam. And she came from Ohio to Illinois, and in 1915, she made this quilt. So we just love this pattern, kind of a sunflower pattern, but Lancaster rose. And later I found that Maggie had come from Manchester, Ohio, the very town where Donna Sue Groves lived and started the Barn Quilt Trail. And now here's Ron with a poem about the Barn Quilt Trail.
And isn't it great having Chris on the other side of the camera for a change? What an improvement, huh, folks? So the Flint Hills Barn Quilt Trail is one example of these barn quilts. The only thing more fun than getting these painted and sharing the story is to go out around and find these quilts and see them on barns and buildings across Kansas. And you can find more information complete with maps, stories, photos at ksflinthillsquilttrail.blogspot.com. Stalking the Elusive Barn Quilt. It's not exactly hunting in the sense of bow or gun, but it does involve a search and it is a lot of fun. It's called a barn quilt trail and they're found across the nation as people seek them out as a tourist destination. It starts with people choosing a nice quilt square design and painting them on panels in colors nice and fine. Then those panels are hung on the side of barn or shed where they're available for viewing by the public, as I said. And when there's several in a region on a route that might entail, it becomes what people now refer to as a barn quilt trail. It started in Ohio and the concept traveled west, where many quilts now stand as they await the traveler's quest. It seems there's been a lot of action on the barn quilt front as people seek them out for a tourist barn quilt hunt. You don't need a hunting license in this quest to prevail. A book, website, or friend can guide you on the barn quilt trail. So folks, as Chris said, we wanted to show you these barn quilts today, but there's a part 2 because we've found some fascinating history about how barn quilts were actually used as a secret code, as symbols for slaves along the Underground Railroad. And this history, it turns out, actually applies to us right here in Riley County. So make sure you join us next week, Tuesday, 1 p.m. for our next session of Live at the Lazy T Ranch. On behalf of Chris Wilson, I'm Ron Wilson, Poet Laureate. Be safe, be well, happy trails, and God bless.